to Season 2 of Pasco Podcast, a series where we discuss leadership and public service. We'd like to thank our sponsors, the 550,000 plus residents of Pasco County, as represented by the Board of County Commissioners. It's through their trust and empowerment of our workforce and leadership team that we're able to bring you this podcast. We created this podcast to help public servants build leadership skills and leverage them for success by sharing the experiences of our peers.
Hi, I'm Dan Biles, and welcome to our 9th episode of Pasco Podcast. Join us today from our Information Technology Department is Chief Information Officer Todd Bayley and Technical Support Manager Todd Curci. Welcome, and thanks for joining the podcast today.
Our pleasure to be here. Thanks, you.
Dan.
All right, so as we get started, can you first tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got here, and then also a little bit about your leadership philosophy and how you lead people?
Okay. Well, I'm Todd Bayley. I've been here for 11 years now, 21 years in the state and local government space. So I started in Coral Springs, had a really good journey there, and I'll probably add to this story later on in this podcast. But I'm happy to be here in Pasco. I'm happy to contribute. I'm looking forward to sharing content. As far as my leadership philosophy is concerned, I'm a big believer in management by walking around. I think you need to have a conviction to lead, and I think you have to have passion. And I still so strongly embody those last two because I feel very convicted and I feel very passionate about what we're doing technology-wise within the organization, what we're doing within the department, and how we're contributing as leaders in the organization. So I'll stop there and I'll pass the baton to Todd.
Todd Curci, Technology Manager, and I've been with the county for 15 years, 15 years in June. I've seen a lot of growth. I came from a retail background, so I spent about 20 years in retail before I came to technology. And my grandmother had always said growing up, she's like, you ought to go into computers. I'm like, all right, Grandma, whatever. Because I fiddled with them at home, Apple IIe back in high school and throughout the years. And finally decided, well, I'm going to go back to school at age 30, got my associate's degree, and ended up here on the help desk and just worked my way up. My philosophy's been over the years in retail, and then here is just, it's all about respect and integrity. So you're in positions where it commands respect, but I'd rather have the respect that's earned than the respect that is supposed to be given you because of your authoritative figure. And then it's about your integrity. I mean, I need to be trusted. I need to be a person that they can come to. I mean, I'm often been called the Todd father because, they can come to me for information and they know that if I don't know the answer, I'll either get it for them or direct them in the right direction. So,
all right. So, I think between the two, I think I've heard 3 of our 4 core values. You talk about innovation, which is one of the core values, and then integrity and respect, two others. As you developed in your career, at what point did you realize that you either wanted to lead others, and then also because you don't lead others unless you kind of enjoy being part of the leadership team? So how did you learn, or when did you realize that's what you wanted to do?
It's an interesting story. I think I go back to my elementary school days as safety patrol, and I tell this story because it was my first interaction with leadership as the captain of the guard, so to speak, of safety patrol, and you raise and lower the flag. But you realize at a young age that you put yourself in a position, in a place to either lead or be able to make a change. And I think that's what's exciting about it. And I want to quote Abraham Lincoln because I'm a big Abe Lincoln fan and a study. And if you ever wanted to read a bunch of healthy quotes, read Abe Lincoln's quotes, because on one of them, he stated that if you want to predict your future, create it. And, we as leaders have that ability. And I'm a big proponent of innovation, one of our core values. And we didn't talk about service excellence, but in order to keep moving our needle forward and keeping our customer service on the front edge, we need to be innovative. And we need to be able to be empowered and have that element of risk to be able to make those changes. Some we're going to fail on, some we're going to succeed on. We're not going to know until we try. But, to have that passion and to have the excitement within the team to get behind you or to come alongside you to share that vision is really exciting. And that's one thing that we do have here. And it really keeps us engaged. It keeps us moving forward. It keeps us coming to work every day as, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today that was different than what we did yesterday? And how does it impact the customer? And, we have these conversations all the time, probably every day in our meetings. And, a lot of times we fail. We're not perfect, but it's not for the sake of not trying. So
I think I learned early on, I was in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts, I went through the different leadership programs and was a leader. I did summer camp. I was a counselor for 5 years. And that's where I really learned my leadership skills, was in Boy Scouts. And so it's nice today to be able to work with my son, who's in Boy Scouts. So I'm heavily involved in Boy Scouts once again. I am an Eagle Scout, and only 8% of Scouts become Eagle Scouts. So it's an honor tradition. So I think that's where I learned my leadership skills early on, and learned from leaders in Boy Scouts. I've learned from managers over the years in different positions I've held. But I mean, when I worked for McDonald's, I was a manager at age 19, which is unheard of. So they saw something in me that said, hey, he's a good leader and he's someone that we want to promote. And I've had that everywhere I went, that, like I said, I earn people's trust because I give them respect. If you want respect, you have to give it in return. So that's how I earned it. And I earned their respect. And like Todd says, I come to work every day invigorated because we're in IT. Technology changes on a daily basis. So you have to keep up with it. And it's nice to be able to come to work and say, what can I do different today? I mean, look at what we did last year with the pandemic. I mean, overnight, we had to come up with, how are we going to do the board meetings? And that progressed over time. And I mean, it's running pretty good today. And we've offered new opportunities to citizens that they didn't have before. And so it was great to earn that trust of people, that they allowed me to expand what I knew and share it with everyone else.
Right. And you mentioned the transition from the 100% in person to the virtual environment, and now the hybrid environment at board meetings. We did that so well, we got recognized by a state group that is very interested in public, disclosure and transparency, with the process we put in place to allow public comment and allow still there to be the interaction. So y'all did a great job overnight in making that happen. So as you've developed your leadership style and skills and philosophy over time, who's kind of been the biggest influence on that?
Wow. So I'm a huge historian, I like to read, and I'm a big proponent of American history. And I'll probably sound really corny when I say this, but, studying George Washington as a charismatic leader, caring for his people, being able to invigorate and excite them to war or to accomplish the mission, if you will. Moving on, and he's a military president. Most of our military leaders have gone on to either presidency or become prominent figures or leaders in our country. And then you take Abraham Lincoln, who was not a military leader, who had strong convictions of a transformational leader. And, what he took the country through, the Civil War and abolition, through abolition. And, it took a special leader to be able to tell the story and to stand convicted on what was the right thing to do. And ultimately, it cost him his life. Those type of personnel in our history excite you because, I listened to the other podcasts, and I was very excited to hear about people in your immediate life that have influence on your life. And, our fathers and our relatives, and our past coworkers bring that. But I also like to study letters of people in the past because, they're not prone to fail you because we're all human and we all make mistakes, right? But I love to read the story on how leaders invigorate people, tell the story to excite you to peace, to excite you to war, to excite you to accomplish the mission. And reflecting back in transformation, Abraham Lincoln said that, America will never fail from anybody from the outside. If we're going to fail, it's from the inside outward. And we have the ability to make that change and to stand behind that conviction. And we have the ability to become leaders. And, as I said earlier, if we want to predict our future, change it, be part of it. And I'll take that now to the technology side. So I had a really good mentor in my past employment down at Coral Springs when we went through the Sterling and the Malcolm Baldridge Award. And we were highly successful. We were a very close-knit team, but we all shared, and we all shared the same vision. We all shared the same mission of the city. Our core competencies were there, but we believed in it to the point that we all came alongside each other and made it happen, right? And we shared that vision, and that culture ultimately changed from that, because not only was it led from the top, it was led from the side, it was led from the bottom up. So communications were good. And I love the fact that this county has started down into that process, down that trail, if you will. And we're, obviously an incredible work of progress, because we're a large organization. We're not 1,000 employees or less. We're 3,000 plus employees at this point. And to share that vision, to share that excitement, to communicate that is a huge task, especially, from you, Dan, from senior leadership. And, we're really encouraged that you share the vision and that you want to start the journey. Are we there yet? No. It's going to take us a while to get there. But again, I love the passion and I love the excitement behind it, because we're actually doing something together that's positive, it's progressive, and it's going to take this organization to new heights. Once we get to the top of that, what do we do from there? That's an interesting conversation, because can we sustain it? And that'll probably be a sign of our leadership at that point. And if we're training people that can replace us, that have the same excitement and vision and passion to carry it forward. So thank you for that question.
I won't be as wordy as he was, but so I don't think I have anyone specific. Like I said, coming up through Boy Scouts, I had different leader influences, different other youth that influenced me. Coming up through, like when I worked for McDonald's for 10 years, they started with the empowerment. You need to empower your employees. So that was a learning experience. Working for Walmart for 19 years, they've gone through a lot of changes that some I agreed with, some I didn't agree with. But you learn from everywhere you've been and pick different pieces and then form that as your toolkit to move forward to how you form your leadership styles.
So as you look kind of on where we are as a county, where your department or where your work group is, and you look at some of the things we've done over the past and in some of the challenges we have coming in front of us. One of the interesting things about technology in government is one changes overnight, as Todd, you mentioned earlier. One, traditionally doesn't change very fast at all, right? So how do you, from a leadership perspective, make those two competing states, if you will, works to be successful in the business and services you deliver here in Pasco? Because y'all do, right? I mean, we really do. From the virtual meetings to some of the other things, how do you make it how do you use your leadership to integrate those two kind of competing, if you will, styles to make the business work?
I'll start with that. That's it's a good question, and I think there's balance there. There's a sense of what we our core competencies versus risk, and I'm going to look at it in a bimodal fashion, if you will. If you look at a pyramid or a triangle, and the base level of that triangle is our core competencies, what we do well every day. We come to work, we do incidences, we do tickets, we do fix-its, service requests, moves, adds, and changes. We do that very well. But as the majority of our department was focused on those elements from traditional information technology departments in the past as a service industry, we're now looking to look for those areas of innovation and then look for those areas of transformation. So innovative changes that add to customer excellence in our core values. And then that other element of our core value called innovation is a much more, it's more difficult to achieve transformation and those innovation steps, because now you're changing the way people work, and you're changing the way they come to work. You're changing the way the business workflow goes from inception to service to the customer to closing that incident. So it's an interesting dialogue that to find that balance. We have a section of our department that's solely dedicated to those core competencies. We struggle with the projects. We struggle with the resources to say that is our number one priority is to get the customer up and running before we start dedicating the extra hours of the day that we may free up for projects and or for innovation. So we're trying to now determine, where that element of risk is, what's our risk appetite for the organization to be able to create transformational changes through technology, but yet take the organization through that slowly and not rapidly. Now, you talk about the pandemic. I think we were fairly prepared because we prepare for hurricanes. We prepare for disasters to begin with. So we look at our department, we look at our organization, and how do we make sure we have the agility to function through any type of disaster? Well, the pandemic came along. We typically were prepared for a week, right? Maybe 2 weeks of a disaster, not for 12 plus months. So it really is a game changer for us. We had technologies in place that moved us forward. Todd was a huge proponent of that, obviously, and his excitement, I kind of led the charge. And we can't build on that enough is that the passion that we had to move forward with that. And I commend him and the rest of the team. They did an excellent job through that. So again, to answer that question, it's balance. And what's our risk appetite? And how much do we want to risk?
So I think it has helped me being here for almost 15 years. I've gotten to know a lot of people, especially when I started out on the help desk. I had to go to departments, deploy PCs and stuff like that. You get to know their lines of business. You get to know how they operate, and you get to know the people, even the commissioners. And when I go back to working with my staff, and I have an awesome staff because they do a lot of innovation on their own. I allow them the freedom to say, not only do we have to get this work done over here, but I want you guys to be looking for other things over here. I don't want you spending all your time getting done what we have to get done because we need innovation. This is IT. That's what we do. So it's been kind of nice because back in October, I think they started that zombie challenge. So we all walked as a team every day, 3 times a day. And believe it or not, during those walks, we called them BS sessions, but that stood for briefing session. And that's where a lot of our innovations come about, because we would talk about maybe something that was going on. And because we talked about it amongst each other, you would have never thought that this person over here would have known or had an idea about what you're talking about. But I would talk about a problem we had in maybe a board meeting, and they're like, well, have you tried this? And I'm like, geez, I never thought of that. I never would have thought to come to you for that, but you thought of that off the cuff. So we've actually continued that to this day. We still try and walk 3 times a day, and we just talk either about life or about things in general or about things that are going on in the county. And we've had a lot of innovations that way. And I encourage that, because I encourage getting to know the lines of business, getting to know your customer, because that's the best way you're going to serve them. We don't just want to sit there and drop a PC off on their desk and set up their monitors and leave. You've got to understand their lines of business, because you've got to understand what they need in order to do what they do every day. So I can't just drop a PC off. I've got to understand that they need this program installed and that program installed and why they need it to work and all the little nuances that go on in different departments. And having that understanding makes us a better department, makes my team a better team. And I encourage that.
Excellent. Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. And, just over the last 4 years, y'all have done a lot of different things to really either better protect our data on the security side or make life easier for people to do work. We went from, basically 100% work in the office, do whatever, to, we still are, 15+% of our employee workforce works most of the time, remotely. And that doesn't happen without innovation and teamwork and all those different types of things. So how do you continue to build your leadership skills, both, professionally and personally? How do you continue to work on those leadership skills over time?
Well, I've gone through Boy Scout leader training called Wood Badge. I just did that in October. So that's on my personal side. And then I was in a current LDP class. So I'm continuing to build my leadership skills that way. And just on a daily basis, listening to people. I mean, that is where I think I had an advantage over the last year running all these meetings, is spending all this time in these meetings. I've learned a lot about different leaders, their leadership styles, about different departments, how they run, and meetings I would have never gone to before. And now I understand all of it. And by getting that understanding, it better helps me provide great customer service. And I would bring that back to my team and tell them, this is what went on in the meeting today, and this is the stuff they talked about. And you'd be surprised at, this, that, and the other thing. And they're like, wow, but it really helps them as well as it helps me. So, I mean, continuing to take those little things every day that you learn from different people and just adding them to your toolbox.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I would like to add, remain humble. No matter how long you're in leadership, you're always learning, and we're never going to stop. And things change. Our environments change. Our generations change, as we heard yesterday. How to deal with Gen Zers and millennials, and as
Right.
that scale grows. I was looking at my bookshelf last night, and I saw these questions, and I think I had over 32 leadership books in my personal home bookshelf, not counting the one here at work. I love to read. And I think reading other styles, reading other methodologies as they continue to change, through our current times, read what they did in the past, read what we're doing in the future. But I also am a strong believer in education, going back to school, and I'm a strong believer in peer-to-peer groups. I know my staff heavily to get involved with government organizations, peer groups like FLAGISA or NACO, or specific technical subject matter expertise type groups, that may have to do with a specific line of business. But I think that human interaction, getting out with not only your peers or people or your peers in the same line of work and also on the private side, is extremely valuable. Because I would never just want to compare myself to Hillsborough County or Pinellas County. I want to compare myself to Amazon, to Google, as we studied. How do we operate? How do they operate? Is there synergies there? Are there things that we can take away? Now, obviously, we can't become a Google and create a flat organization and just be distributed all over the world, because we have a job to do for our citizens in Pasco County. But I think we can learn a lot from that. And how else do you learn other than be engaged, right? Be engaged with your peers, with the state, and on the national side as well. So I'm a big cheerleader for that.
Right. Yeah, I remember we had a discussion on a couple of years ago about Cisco in the work they were doing from an engagement perspective with their teams and their employees, and brought some of that a little bit into our organization. So as we're in a kind of a unique situation now, as we are still in part of the pandemic, some elements winding down with the vaccine rollout and some other stuff. So as you move forward and as we all progress in our careers, how do you identify and help raise and build other leaders or the next generation of leaders? And I'm not necessarily millennials or Zs, but all leaders, right? How do you do that in your teams?
You just have to identify who. Like, I've asked my team when I pulled them in, have one-on-ones, I know what are you looking for? What do you want to do? And some of my guys are, I have the spectrum of Gen Zs, baby boomers, all that kind of stuff on my team. And obviously the baby boomers are looking at retiring, so they're done. They've done their leadership. They don't want any more. So I look to the younger guys and say, what do you want? And they tell me, I would like to be a leader one day, or I don't really foresee myself going down that road. So if they say that, I say, why not? And then they tell me, and then I say, well, we'll talk about it again in the future, see if you change your mind in 6 months. But then I just every day impart my knowledge on them and try and teach them stuff that maybe I've learned over the years or the way I do things. And then I ask them how they would do it and kind of have that one-on-one so that they see that, okay, he's looking at me to be a leader, and I need to, maybe start looking at it from his point of view instead of from a tech point of view. So start building on that and then helping to shape and develop them over the years, just so that way when I move up, somebody can move in my space, or if I go elsewhere, somebody else can take my spot and pretty much add their own twist to what I've built over the years.
Right.
So I'm a baby boomer. I'll be honest. I think I'm just as excited today that I was probably when I was 23 years old coming out of the Coast Guard. But I look for people that have passion. I look for people that want to. I look for the statesmanship in people. It sounds hokey, but it's not. We're here to build a better tomorrow for our children and for the citizens of Pasco County and for the people in our area. No matter where you go, you should have this frame of mind, because we're not here to collect a paycheck. If there's a lot of other places we could be if that was the case. We want to make a change. And I look for people that have and share that excitement and embrace that. If you start talking about retirement, you're retired, I think, at that point in my mind. But I do think we need to empower. I do think we need to give people an opportunity to lead. And I think we have to be prepared for them to fail as well. But count that towards their, education, if you will. And, that's an old saying, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. I do think we need to have good succession planning. I don't think we're great at that right now. I can truly speak to my department. I don't think we do well in our succession planning. And that's something that we put on our goal sheet this year to work on. But I do think we have to be able to step back and put somebody in, give them the training that they need, but give them the opportunity to experience it. And I think they're going to surprise you. And I think sometimes we hold back, and I don't know if it's personal pride or what have you, but I do think we should give everybody that opportunity. Not everybody is a born leader. I don't think there are born leaders. I think leadership is something you become passionate and convicted of. But I do think that everybody could potentially lead. And I think we have to give them a chance. And, they may be in the chair and say, yes, I love the responsibility and I love the passion and excitement. And they may say, hey, I'm more comfortable being, focused on a technical aspect and delivering, through the back office, so to speak. And great, we need those folks too. So give them the opportunity.
Right. Great. So I'm going to go a little off script here. So you mentioned, management by walking about, and you mentioned you walking around with your teams. But as part of the pandemic, we went to a lot of remote work. So how did you blend that, and what is your kind of vision going forward with your teams with respect to hybrid/remote work? And how do you lead those teams that you don't necessarily see every day because they're in a remote type environment? Because that's a little different mentality from a leadership perspective, right?
Yes. I'll start that one. I'm pretty bad at this. I'll be truthful. We can support 100% distributed work. I like to call work from home distributed because I don't care if you're at home or just in another building or if you're in another state. There's an element of trust there that sometimes I struggle with personally, and I have to get over that. But I don't want us to just produce widgets. And, my philosophy behind that, and it's a personal philosophy, is we can put anybody anywhere in this country or even overseas, and they can do their job remotely through Zoom, through WebEx, and producing or writing code, if you will. But I lose that sense of engagement. I lose, like you and I and Todd are sitting in this room looking at each other, I lose that personal connection. And I love the engagement because I'm very people oriented. And, I love people. If I ever had to just work at my home office and never see anybody, I think I would have a hard mental problem with that. But I like looking at somebody in the eye. I like the expression. I like the feedback. I like to chit chat with that too. I like to get to know somebody. And I lose that with video conferencing. And maybe it's because we just get on at a certain time and we talk about a business problem or we talk about the agenda and then we close the meeting and we're done. And there's no time to say, hey, how's your wife and family? Your arm was hurting. Are you doing okay? And that may happen through chat and outside of that, but I'm certainly not engaged with that. So I'm always concerned about the level of engagement and having our folks understand and talk to other people in the organization as to what they're experiencing, what their pain points are outside of a text,
right.
And so I'm very relational, and there's where I struggle, but it's certainly doable.
Right.
I think it's more of a generational thing because you'll find that a lot of millennials would rather text than talk to you face to face, would rather video chat in 5 minutes real quick. And then, so you've got to know, once again, got to know your audience. And so I was lucky that my team was all here working. And at one point when you sent certain people home over a certain age, I had individuals that work from home. So yes, we did chat for 5 minutes or so on a daily basis, but we also used WebEx Teams to chat back and forth and stuff like that. They were fine with it. They liked it that way. And they just, I knew I could trust what they were doing at home, and I could see the productivity, things getting done. So I was comfortable with it, and I didn't mind it. But like I said, I think it's generational. Like, your generation, and I'm on both sides of the fence because I'm not a baby boomer. I'm right after that. And so, Gen X, I'm 50. So, I go either way. I don't mind. I like texting, but I also like a phone call. I'm like Todd. I like to chat and have the different conversations. That's where you learn about people. That's where you learn about different things. Like you said, you just hang up and we're done. But afterwards, that's where you hang out in the conference room and chat for a few minutes, or, walk down the hall as you're walking out to your car and chat with somebody. And that's where you learn different things. Even if you're talking about work, you just learn different things. So I think we kind of lost that during the pandemic. I mean, even see that with my son who's doing school at home. He's become more of a hermit.
Right.
So he can't wait to go back to school because he wants to get back with his friends and he wants to be able to do stuff. So yeah, it's a odd balance.
And what's interesting is, the paradigm of IT is the nerd, very introverted. Oh, I just want to sit here and stare at my screen and do that work. And all we've spent this time talking about is people and relationships, which is not what you would, when you think IT, that's not necessarily the paradigm you think about with IT. So one other kind of question, we have a core value of respect, right? And we've talked before that the foundation of leadership is trust. And you mentioned trust, and that you have to trust your people before they trust you. But in an IT security environment, how do you balance the need for data security, network security, and then trust? Because your biggest risk is, as we've talked about before, is actually the team, right? From a data and network security perspective. So how do you balance the need to secure the data, secure the network, but also trust and respect the team that needs access and to work the data?
So I'll lead this one off. I'm going to just go out there and say it, that we have a zero trust mentality. And while we might be the best friends on this planet, we have to take that posture anymore, because everyone in our organization is now a security analyst, if you will. They are our front line of defense. So we are prone to error, and we're prone to click things quickly. We're prone to get distracted what we're doing during our day. And the ways that we're being attacked aren't conventional anymore. They're areas that we haven't even considered ourselves today. And authenticating who comes into the network, that's why we went to two-form factor authentication. Our next step is to go to a stronger password, which is not going to be user-friendly. It's going to be necessary, but it's going to cause some hardship on our teammates. And, we regret that. But our job is to protect our intellectual property, which is our data in this organization. And without that, I would hate to count the losses, financially and as well as functional, if we didn't have that in front of us every day to be able to do our jobs. So we take it very serious. We try to stay as leading edge as possible, that within our financial confines, as well as what we're able to execute, manage, and train our teammates with. It's always forefront in whatever we do, but it's not a conversation that is a showstopper anymore. It's not that you cannot do this because of security. It's how can we do this together with security? And I'm really proud of our security team. They've done an outstanding job. They're almost 24/7. They're amazing to me. But we're now all becoming security experts, and I appreciate the comment, because I know from your perspective you've been on the forefront of this with us, and we've taken it very seriously. And knock on wood, our county has not been affected to date, and we could get affected tomorrow. It's how do we react, recover, and learn from it quickly so that we can keep providing services to our citizens. Right? That's the key.
So, from my perspective, because I deal with the users more on a day-to-day basis than Todd would, taking from one of the other Todds in our department, he always says, break everything down Barney style. So that's where you get with the user and you tell them, hey, look, yes, we're implementing stronger passwords. Yes, you have the Duo, for two-form authentication. Yes, it's a pain in the neck, but do you want to be that one employee that takes down the whole system. And now we can't issue building permits. And guess what? Because we can't do that, because we're down for 30 days, because, there's ransomware. Guess what? We're not having income coming into building construction services. So guess what? You might be out of a job. So do you want to be that one person that causes other people? When you break it down like that, then they kind of say, oh, the light goes on, and they're like, all right, yes, it's a pain in the butt, but I realize that I have to do this to keep things safe. So when you break it down like that to them, and I try and do that with all technology, it sinks in a little better.
Right. Well, and I like, your comment of they're all part of your security analyst team, right? Every employee is part of the security team because they're part of the ones trying to do that. And some of the things y'all have done over the last few years, between the random testing to now we have the fish alert that we can actually just click on and don't worry about it. And in your help desk looks into that to decide whether or not it's secure, to the different things we have. Yeah, it's a little more difficult from time to time, but it's much easier than dealing with being, as you mentioned, down for 30 days and not having access to the data. So no, I think so. I kind of wanted to wrap that into that, because trust is part of what we do.
Absolutely.
So even with the 2 off script questions, I'm kind of done with that. So we'll go on to the lightning round, kind of let the people watching kind of know a little bit more about you. No right or wrong answer to these. So we'll just go on. These are not questions that you've seen. You may have heard.
Okay.
And we'll skip the Star Wars versus Star Trek one.
Oh,
I know the answer to that one.
Just do the force joke.
Yeah, a little close. Yeah. So we mentioned texting and talking earlier. Which one do you prefer, texting or talking?
Oh, listen, I'm a talker. I'll be the first. And I'm all thumbs texting, and I'm a tech guy. I much rather prefer a conversation on the phone or in person than text. And that's always that way for me. So
I'm both sides of the fence, because it depends on the situation. If you ask me a question, you need yes or no, then that's fine. But if you need a lengthy explanation, I'm not going to sit there and type it all out. I'd rather just pick up the phone and talk about it and be done in 5 minutes than spend 20 minutes reading something that might be out of context. So I go both ways.
Okay. So what's your favorite holiday?
May the 4th.
May the 4th coming up.
No, Christmas. Christmas is my favorite holiday. I'm an Italian, full-blood Italian, and I come from a big Italian family. And that was growing up, aunts, uncles, cousins, and there's 40 or 50 of us every year for Christmas. And it's great to sit there and listen to all their old stories and stuff like that. So that's one of my favorite times of year.
Wow. So I'll disclose this. I've been an ordained church officer for 30 years. So I'm going to take my two religious holidays out of the equation there, because I'll keep that out of this conversation. But I love Thanksgiving. Why? I think it's a time to reflect, and we should be doing this every day, not once a year, but on how much we are thankful, thankful for our families, our friends, our situation that we've been put in. I love football, so it's a football kind of a season too. So I just love the whole and there's no sharing of gifts, there's no expectations or anything outside of it other than being grateful and sharing our gratitude with each other.
Right. No, great, appreciate that. So, what's your favorite city in the U.S. besides Pasco, Tampa area?
I like Seattle during the summer, not the rainy months. Just because there's a lot of stuff going on in Seattle. There's a lot you can do. I mean, I've been whale watching off of there. I've been to Pike's Market, my favorite. I could spend all day there. So it's just a vibrant city, and there's a lot to offer.
So like the 3 months out of the year, July, August, and September.
Exactly. And that's usually when I've always gone.
Yeah. We lived up there for a decade. So yeah.
Wow. I don't know if I have a favorite. I don't want to sound corny. I love where I'm at, and I love any place that has an old town charm to it. I like the old restaurants on the sidewalk. Again, I'm very, if you can't tell, I'm very extroverted. I love talking to people, and I don't care if they're strangers or not. So if it has a hometown charm and it's got, that hometown environment where people are just friendly, that's my kind of place.
All right, cool. Thanks. All right. So the normal local government question, The Office or Parks and Rec?
I have seen neither. So
okay, well there you go. You're too much time watching Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm not a big TV watcher, but I think I probably watch more episodes of Office. So I think Office came before Parks and Rec. So I'd probably say Office. I think my big time favorite was MASH, which was way before those two programs. So
Yeah, and you couldn't get away with a
Date
lot of that
myself
today.
there. No, absolutely not.
No. So dawn or dusk, morning or evening?
Good question. I prefer dusk.
Okay.
I like to see the sun set. Plus, I don't have to get up so early.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm totally a morning person. I'm in bed early, and I like to get up early, and I more especially like to be on a tee box early in the morning. But I love to golf. So no, morning, I think more clearly, and it just seems to be a more of a focused time, and
Right.
I respect that.
Yeah. I don't know many places that have better sunsets in Florida consistently. Yeah, consistently. So dusk is nice. So one last question. So what place most do you want to travel? What's your next, where you want to go?
Anywhere other than here. No, if it wasn't pandemic, I'd definitely want to head to Italy, but kind of European travel right now. So I would probably say if I had to go in the United States, California. I haven't been there.
Okay.
So I'd like to explore California.
Excuse me. Outside the U.S., Ireland, Scotland, and Iceland.
Okay.
And I actually have been trying to go there, and I think I've got 2 cancellations on my cruise. So it's been a dream to go there, and someday it'll be a reality, but probably give it another couple of years.
All right, cool. Well, hey, thank you both Todds for being here.
Thank you.
Todd and Todd. We really appreciate it. It was great to have you. Great to have you here, and special thanks to our media relations team who made this effort possible, and they do a great job day in and day out for us. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Pasco Podcast. I'm Dan Biles, and until the next one.
For more information on Pasco County government, please visit mypasco.net and check us out on Facebook and Twitter.